Hey, beauty friends. Welcome to the Beadalon Michaels class for today. Thank you so much for joining me. We are going to have a very fun class today. And just to let everybody know, this class is being recorded. And it's kind of sometimes I do classes that are make-along classes. And sometimes I do classes that are watch and learn and go back later on. And this is kind of a hybrid of both of those things. You can very easily make along with me today. But the majority of our project today is stringing up beads onto the memory wire. And so for that part of the project, I'm going to fast forward because nobody really needs to see me stringing up beads for 10 to 15 minutes onto memory wire. So let me show you right out of the gate what I am making today while we are waiting for the rest of our participants to come. It's a little blown out here. Let me turn this light off real quick. I'll turn it back on when we go down to making. But this is what we're making today. It is a napkin ring, and we are using memory wire to make this napkin ring. Now, could this also be a bracelet? Let's find out. I haven't actually put it on, but I don't see any reason why it can't also be a bracelet. So we're going to talk a little bit about memory wire. And we're also going to learn or review one of my favorite techniques, which is making a knotted head pin. And we're going to play around with some other materials that I have in my craft stash, and you might as well. And I'll talk about some variations and some different ways you can do a similar project. So while we are waiting for everybody to bop on and get comfortable and get their beading supplies out, go ahead and put in the comments, let me know where you're from. I love seeing we have people from all over the world joining us in these Michaels classes. And it is so wonderful to be building a community of like-minded people who love learning new techniques about using materials to make jewelry. And also just we get to hang out for an hour every week, and it's delightful. It's the highlight of my week. It really is. And then of course, what I always love to know, and if you have been with me before, you know what question is coming next. Is this your first class with me, or have you taken many classes with me? I think this is now maybe my 20th class for Michaels. And if you are interested in learning some more things, some more techniques for making jewelry with Beadalon and artistic wire projects, when we're done today, you can go back onto the Michaels community classroom and go back and watch all of our past classes. I've done everything from basic beading, we've done some stitching, we've done loom work, pretty much everything that you see in the beading and jewelry aisle from Beadalon at Michaels, we've gone over. And I've got a couple of things scheduled that you definitely have not seen before. So 2 o'clock on Wednesdays, that's Eastern Standard Time. We're in Eastern Pennsylvania. That's when the Beadalon classes are for Michael. So I hope you will join us today and every Wednesday going forward. So it looks like we have a lot of people here from the United States. I would love to know if we have any international guests today. And you'll see in the comments, Yvette from Beadalon is with us as well. And she is going to answer questions. And so if you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the comments. I read as I go along, but sometimes I miss some things. So she'll be there to answer all of your questions. She will also be posting the instructions. This is a pretty straightforward, not too difficult, down and dirty kind of a project, but I love a project like that takes techniques and skills that we know and then tweaks them a little bit for perhaps not a jewelry related item, but for a home decor related item or a decoration. That would be home decor as well. So I saw Yvette just posted the instructions. So Felicia, why don't we flip that camera over and we can start talking about what our materials are for the class today. So in the materials list, and I'm just going to go over everything one by one before we get started. This is, of course, our goal in mind. This is where we're going. And I do have a lot of stuff out here on the bead mat today. Sometimes there are only a couple of materials on the bead mat, but today is definitely a supply heavy heavy bead mat. And so, sometimes for my creativity, I don't know about for you, but I like kind of having everything laid out in front of me sometimes, and then things kind of pop together in my brain. So let's see, let's talk about what materials we're going to use. First things first, we are working today with memory wire. Now, memory wire is this slinky looking kind of wire here. It is stainless steel. This is what the package looks like, just in case you are looking for it in the store. This is what it will look like. And it comes in a number of different finishes. You can get it in silver and in gold and an antique finish. We are using the bright today in the round. You can also actually get it in oval and in heavy duty. I think those are all the flavors that are available in Michaels. And you can tell just right now, I love just kind of playing with it. But the great thing about memory wire is that it remembers its shape. So you can pull it out of, frame, you can also pull it out of shape, and it's going to spring back. So if you use several coils, like we did here for our napkin ring, you don't need a clasp, which is a great benefit of using memory wire. Now, sometimes I do like to use clasps on memory wire. You can. They're different finishing techniques to use for those. Now, when you're using memory wire, and I'm going to jump ahead to the tools section very, very quickly, because I cannot say too many times that when you are working with memory wire, the only thing that you can use to cut the memory wire is memory wire shears. And that's what these guys are. They are a true flush cutter. They are extremely good at cutting, and you can actually use these for cutting thick artistic wire as well. You just make sure that you do not use your good cutters for cutting memory wire, because they'll get a little divot in there, and then that will be sad and then never cut the same again. So always, always, always use memory wire cutters, or you'll see them referred to as memory wire shears as well. That's what you want to use to cut memory wire. And we can see, we'll keep a running tally of how many times I say that during our class today. So that's memory wire. We are also going to be using some German style wire. And this is 24 gauge German style wire. And I chose gold because my palette is yellows and golds and wood beads. So I thought that the gold really complemented that very, very nicely, rather than using the silver. So this is 24 gauge gold. And this is what we'll be using to make our knotted head pins. So those are the materials. And now, of course, for the fun stuff. So we are going to need these wooden beads, and all of these materials are listed in the instruction sheet. They are 25 millimeter natural wood oval beads. And on this strand of beads also come 2 smaller beads. And I only had 1 strand of the wooden beads, so I used these wooden beads in my example. But just know that that wooden strand actually also comes with these guys right here. So it's a nice kind of added bonus. I like how Michaels does that on many of their bead strands. You get a little bit of an added bonus. And Yvette is very kindly putting the links in the comments to the Michaels web pages of these products. So the next beads that I'm going to use are these semi-precious beads right here. Let's see, I was like showing when I can the part number. Let's do that right side up, right? These are quartzite, 6 millimeter quartzite, but you could use any bead of that strikes your fancy to do this project. And that's why I really like these kinds of projects, because you might not have these particular beads in your beading stash, or you might like a different color. Go ahead and use that for the project. So what I wanted to do for this project is to make a dangle that looked like an acorn. So do you guys think, did I hit it as well as I wanted to? It was a little bit of a challenge for me, but I think that at least has a hint of an acorn. And the way that I did that is I used these bead caps. Bead caps, yeah, bead caps. I always get bead cones and bead caps mixed up. And they actually come on a strand as well. And they look like this. And generally what you do with bead caps is you put them on either side of a bead, in this case, a larger bead. But for this, I use them as little hats to make my acorns. So fun. And then what I did, because I didn't want them to be this silver tone, I used a little bit of alcohol ink and a dauber. And these are both Ranger products that you can purchase at Michael's. And they're super, super easy to use. And I really just used like a dab of the alcohol ink, and we'll go over how to do that. You can see how bad I am at keeping my fingers clean when we get to that part of it. And then I also I used these leaves for another project that I did recently for Michael's. They are the metal pleated beads. Super, super fun. We're going to add some of those for another dangle. And I almost forgot, we'll do last but not least, the size 8 check seed beads. If you don't have size 8s, use size 11s or size 6s. That's, again, this is a big bead, little bead kind of a design that you are free to make your own. So then we don't need any kind of special tools or anything other than the memory wire shears, because we only use the memory wire shears to cut memory wire. But we will need a chain nose plier, actually 2 chain nose pliers, which we always need for our classes, a round nose plier, because we're going to be making round things, and then our nylon jaw pliers. And we'll be using these guys to straighten the wire when we make the knotted head pin. So that is everything that you will need to make this project. And eventually, of course, a napkin, right? Because we're making a napkin ring. So I think we are ready to dive in and get started. So the first thing you'll do is take your memory wire, and you'll need, I think about 3.5 coils makes a nice substantial napkin ring. You don't want it to be too flimsy, but I suppose you could go as thick really as you want, but this amount here uses up 1 full pack of these guys right here. So when you buy this this strand or this grouping, you actually get 2 7-inch strands of beads. Let's get our words together, Meredith. So that gives this, that's what this looks like. So if you want to buy 2, then you do more. If you want to add more spacer beads, you can do that also. So we're going to count out 1, 2, 3. I'll just do 4 just to make it even. And this is where those memory wire shears come into play. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here nice and close and just squeeze. And just squeeze, watch what I'm doing. And you can see how nicely that cuts. I'll do that one more time, just while I'm watching, as opposed to looking at the screen. So you can really see and hear how that cuts really, really nicely, really, really straight, flush cut. And like I said, I use those memory wire shears for cutting really all the way up to, like, let me rephrase that, 10 to 16 gauge artistic wire is what I use the memory wire shears for. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm taking my round nose pliers and I'm just going to turn a loop. And I turn my loop away from the natural curve of the wire. You don't want to turn it in, you want to turn it away. And to do that, I usually grip it about halfway. And these are the sparkle handled pliers that are available at Michael's. And they have a nice thin tapered jaw. So I like to go about halfway up. And I'm just going to grip that right at the end and rotate my wrist until I get a nice loop here, just like that. Now, a couple of different things that you can do with this loop. One of the things that I like to do is come back in here with my chain nose pliers and bend it back against my thumb. And then it really looks more like an eye pin rather than a P. Let's see if I can get that nice and close so you can really see what I'm talking about. Come on, phone, let's get into focus. So it just gives it a little bit of extra something something that makes it look nice and decorative. Another thing that you can do, and I will allow this if it's easier for you, especially as you're getting started, is come in here and turn it into a spiral. I won't slap your hand for that. If you think that that is going to be a little bit easier for you, you can feel free to use a spiral. I think I would still come in here though and back it out just to make it a little bit more decorative and straight. Okay, so two different ways of finishing it up. I will allow a spiral. It's not necessarily a traditional way, but when we're sometimes when we're starting out, we don't need to be traditional. So now I had mentioned that we are doing a big bead, little bead design. So you want to tap out some of your size 8. These are my size 8 seed beads. But of course, you can use 6s, you can use 11s. Really, any beads that will fit over the memory wire is great for this project. And the thing that I love about the Michaels beads is they generally have larger holes. And so if you were using beads with much smaller holes, they would not fit as well or at all over this memory wire. But because the Michaels beads have nice big drilled holes, they are very easy to thread up onto the memory wire. So I was working as we were getting ready today for our Zoom class. I have one that is practically already done. So I'm going to go ahead and finish stringing up. And you can see how quickly, if you kind of get into the Zen groove of it, again, big bead, little bead, you could do any pattern you want. But what I did before is I just took one of these packs and I started at the beginning, and I'm going to go all the way to the end, unless, maybe you want to save a couple beads. Maybe you love the color and you want to make a pair of earrings, or they're the perfect bead to complement another design. You don't have to use every single bead in the pack, but I think that it's kind of the perfect sweet spot of the right size for the napkin ring, at least to my eye. So big bead, little bead, and you can see with the memory wire, the more beads you get on it, the heavier it becomes, and the more those beads kind of want to spread out from each other. But once they're on your project or on their wrist, that's where that awesome remembrance memory comes into play. And I'm also I'm holding the end and kind of holding the rest of the bracelet out of the way with my fingers. Sometimes the memory wire likes to kind of tangle up on itself and make my life more difficult. My life, life is difficult enough. We don't need our memory wire getting in there. And it looks like I've used up all of my citrine beads. So I'm sorry, quartzite beads. They look like citrine, which is pretty cool. All right, let me get these seed beads out of the way, and then we're done with the stringing portion. And that's a really nice, if we're just thinking about making a bracelet, it's really nice. All right, so to finish it off, once again, I think this is the third time that I've said we are only using our memory wire shears to cut memory wire. And for this, what I like to do is leave about a 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. And this part really comes um, from practice and from knowing where on your pliers you like to make your loop. This is also a good way for that coiling technique that I mentioned in the beginning. If you're not quite sure, make it a little longer, right? Because you can always cut more off, but after you cut it, you certainly can't add any more to it. So let's see. This I know that it's going to be a little bit too long, so I'm going to trim it. And then I'm going to come here with my pliers. And again, I know that I did the first loop with my pliers. They're flush right here and about halfway up the jaws. And once again, I'm just going to roll that up. And I made it a little bit small, and that's okay. I'm just going to come in here and finagle it in the way I want it to go. So once again, until you get a little bit more comfortable with that technique, just go ahead and do a coil. I will allow it. I used to be a purist in such things, but I think it's better to start getting more comfortable with techniques rather than being caught up in doing things the right way, because really there's so many different right ways of doing things. And one of the things that happens to me often, I don't know if this happens to you when you're working with memory wire, but see how that little bead escaped? I need to get him back into place. I had a little escapey bead. So I'm just going to kind of pull this back and finagle it around. And what I'm doing is with my chain nose pliers, I'm closing up that loop. So now that little size 11 bead or size 8 bead can't escape. So the bigger the hole on this bead and the kind of less precise you make this loop, your bead could possibly escape. But as you can see, you show that bead where you want it to go and you make it go where you want it to go. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're going to put that aside and we're going to start on our acorns. We're going to make our acorns. And now I'm remembering that I needed to have put 2 beads aside for my ends. So we're going to see what I have around in arm's length to make that work. Actually, you know what we're going to do? We are going to, not with that, it gives me one more opportunity to talk about cutting memory wire with the memory wire shears. Just going to snip this off on the end and remove those 2 beads that I need. And then this didn't cut quite as flush as I want it to. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull this back into place. So if you need to, remember that you can just snip it and redo that loop, right? No big thing. No big thing. And now I have my 2 beads that I'm going to need for the ends. And as I mentioned in the beginning, when you get this strand of beads that the big ovals come on, these 2 little wooden beads will be there on the bottom. I'm just substituting, which if you like the look of the substitution better, go ahead and use different beads for it. No problem. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to patina these bead caps with the alcohol ink. And I'm using ginger. In the pack that this comes in, there are 3 different colors. It's called Cabin Cupboard. And ginger is one of the colors. But if you like, you could use one of the other colors as well. This is just the one that I thought looked the nicest. Now, I am no expert on alcohol ink, but I do know that you should use it in a well-ventilated room because it can get a little fumy. But all you want to do is just put enough onto the felt pad and then just kind of paint it on, really. You don't need a lot, and then it also dries really quickly. So just a little bit more. And again, it's just like a couple of drops that I'm using, and you can use any kind of mixative or any kind of fun next level kind of alcohol ink technique that you have in your arsenal. But for this, I just wanted to give it a quick different color. And you can do this with all different kinds of findings. In the Michaels section, of course, in the beading section, there are all different silver findings, but nothing really in this kind of patinaed copper, at least what I really wanted and needed for this project. So I made my own, right? I probably should seal this ink, but it's not going, alcohol ink, once it dries, it doesn't really go anywhere. So I probably, I don't know. I like I said, I'm no expert on alcohol ink. I probably wouldn't necessarily need to seal it, but that's a very, very good question. Some other people might be able to weigh in a little bit more on the answer to that. Okay, so we did that, and now what we're going to do is my magical, I shouldn't say that they're mine. I did not come up with this technique, but I teach it all the time because I love it. We are going to make knotted head pins. And what it's going to do is, you can see this little kind of, that's just all I can think of is a knot, but it's almost like a, I don't know, somebody weigh in and help me with what that looks like. But that's actually a head pin in here. So let's go ahead and make that. So for this, I can use, of course, my regular cutters, because this is 24 gauge German style wire. And you really only need 3 inches, but especially when you're demonstrating, I think it's better to have a little bit more than a little bit less. I'm going to make 2 of these. So once again, I'm going to use my round nose plier because I'm making something round. And to do this, you want to get that wire right up in the very, very tips of your pliers and right inside. So you don't want any wire coming out here. And you're going to make a coil. So not a spiral, but a coil. And you can see I'm rotating my wrist. I'm not rotating the wire, and I'm not hyper rotating my wrist. I'm just rotating it in little small movements and replacing the jaws each time. And I'm going to go around 3 times. Okay. 3 times to right here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my thumb and I'm going to bend that wire straight up. And if it's a little curved like that, you can use your fingers and just kind of straighten it out, but it's no big deal if it's not perfectly perfect. Okay. So now I can put my pliers down, and this is where I always like to say the magic happens. So I'm going to switch my hands. So I have this holding in my hand and my coil is on my right side. I'm going to switch it so the coil's in my left hand and on the left side. And I'm going to thread this end through that coil. Okay, and I'm just going to push it through as much as is comfortable. And now I'm going to grab those nylon jaw pliers that I mentioned in the very beginning and put them right against that coil. And I'm right-handed, so I'm going to take my pliers from my right hand into my left, and then I'm going to grab the end with my chain nose pliers and gently pull. I know I've got a lot going on in the background, but I'm going to gently pull so that that little knot tightens up. Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to, Cindy is mentioning the way to set the alcohol ink. You could hit that with the heat gun, but I really don't think that you need to. Let me show that little knotted head pin just one more time, because I do need to make 2. I'm going to do it a little faster this time. I'm going to come here on the end. I'm going to make that coil once, twice, 3 times. I'm going to push it up with my thumb, change hands, put the end back through the coil, get my pliers in line, and pull. Oops, let's get that back a little more in focus. There we go. Okay. So now I have 2 head pins, and I love using these head pins. If you've taken classes with me for in the past, you know that I very rarely will use a store-made head pin, but I am a humongous fan of making my own. Okay, so now I'm just going to do the same thing on both of my dangles. If you wanted to make 3, you could make 3. If you only want to do 1, just do 1. Totally up to you. So this is the part that we're putting together right now. So we're adding that 1 bead at the bottom, then my oval bead, then my top. And now I'm going to do a wrapped loop up at the top. So I should probably add my, oops, you know what? I wanted to use these ones. I guess it doesn't really matter. And part of the reason why I am doing this on the very, very bottom is because you see how ginormous these holes are. Take that off. So you definitely need something at the bottom to make sure that it doesn't go through. Even though that little knotted head pin is pretty big, you still need something pretty big to prevent the bead from going all the way through. So as much as the creative process in jewelry making is all about aesthetics, there's a lot of construction and kind of engineering that goes into doing this as well. Now, if the top of your head pin is a little wonky, that's where these nylon jaw pliers come in, because they make very, very quick work of any kinks or any little nicks in that wire. All right, so wrapped loop. Very easy. If we haven't done this before, we're going to do it twice right now, and then you'll know how to do them from now on. So the way that I like to make a wrapped loop, and that is a caveat because there are different ways that different people make wrapped loops. This is how I like to make my wrapped loop. I hold the wire in my round nose pliers because I'm making something round, and I use either my thumb or my finger and push that wire over. This is where I like to hold it at a super awkward angle for me, but you guys can see. So it's coming up here at about a 45-degree angle. And so now what I do, I have my pliers horizontal. I'm going to put them vertical. And then I'm going to take my index finger and I'm going to pull that wire over the top part of the wire toward me. So this is what this guy is going to look like. Okay. Now, my wire is over the top jaw of my plier. I need that wire now to be in the bottom jaw of my plier. And I'm going to switch my hands so that the bead now, it was down here facing this way. Now it's going to come up and face this way. And it seems a little awkward at first until you do it a couple times, and then it really becomes second nature. So I'm holding my plier, my round nose plier here, straight up and down, and I'm going to pull the tail of that wire around toward me. The most important thing when you're making wrap loops is everything is at very precise angles. So this right here is crossing at a 90-degree angle. And now I'm using 24 gauge wire, so it's nice and soft. And I could theoretically wrap it around. But if I'm using any wire that's thicker, I like to use what I call the push and pull technique. So I'm pushing it under here, and then I'm going to pull it toward me. I'm going to push it underneath, and I'm going to pull it toward me. Let me make sure I'm really getting that in nice frame in here. Push underneath, pull it toward me. And I want to do that until my wire is at the top of that bead cone, bead cap. See, I did it. Necklace cone, bead cap. All right, now I'm just going to straighten that out in case it got a little wonky. And I'm going to come in with my nipper again. And this is where you want to make sure that you get it nice. And I'm going to have to cut it twice, really tight in there. And if you can't get it any tighter, right? I can't get it any tighter. I'm going to come in here with my chain nose pliers and just tuck that tail down. Whenever I look at handmade or homemade jewelry, I can always tell if someone hasn't tucked that tail down, if they haven't kind of taken as much care as they should have in finishing their project. Okay, so now we have one dangle do. Now we're going to go ahead and do the other one. And I will talk that through again, but a little bit faster. So let's see. Let's try to get a little bit of a clearer background. And how about I bring it down here instead of holding it in midair? There we go. Now we're talking. Okay. So once again, bend it over, flip my pliers up, come around like that, in between the top and the bottom. And I always like to do this part with my pliers. I find that it is, I need a little bit of room here for my fingers and my hands. I find it much better than just using my fingers to do this part. You might have better luck with your fingers. I just think it is much easier for me to do this part with my pliers. Okay. Then I'm going to come in here and snip this off. I'm going to get it as close as I can with my cutters. And that one actually was pretty darn good. But if I had a little tail here, I would go ahead and just tuck it in and make sure that there was no tail coming out. So we definitely do not want to see that. All right, so now I have my two acorns. They're looking a little bit less like acorns with these big beads here. I think that the wooden beads are a little bit of a better look for that, but you do whatever feels right for you. And now with the embellishment up top, this is where we can have a lot of fun. So I really liked these leaf metal beads, but you could use so many different things to adorn up here if you had something else in your stash, or if you found something else in the Michaels beading aisle. There's so much cool stuff there. Right now, they're actually glass beads also, and I could talk for ages about all the different things that you could use, but I really happen to like this. Let's see, these are the multi-plated metal leaf mix, and I'm going to grab, we'll do a little mixed metals here. I have one gold and one in the bronze color. And all I'm going to do now is use some jump rings, some gold jump rings, to attach them to the loop in the memory wire. Let's see if I can show that a little bit better. To attach them to the loop in the memory wire. And if it's easier for you, go ahead and attach them all to one loop and then attach that loop to the loop and the memory wire. And in fact, I might show that today just as a variation. So as everybody should know by now, but if not, I'm going to go over it at least 4 times. Opening and closing a jump ring. So that is why I always recommend in the beginning that you need 2 chain nose pliers. I have a bent chain nose plier here and a regular chain nose plier. You can use 2 chain nose pliers. You can use 2 bent chain nose pliers. You could even use, if I had one over here, and I do, a flat nose plier. It's oftentimes it's just what I reach for first. And the way that you do this is you bend one toward you and one away from you. So you don't bend them out or any other way. You bend one toward and one away. Okay. And I'm going to pick up one. Am I going to pick up one leaf? I'm going to drop one leaf. I'm going to pick up one leaf. And I can just feel that I didn't open that quite enough. So I'm just going to open it a little bit more. And then I'm going to choose, it really doesn't matter. I don't think it matters. It doesn't matter which loop you use, and just go ahead and loop it on. Okay. And I know I said I was going to loop everything to one loop and then loop that loop on. Let's see what happens there. There's only one way to find out. And I'm just going to double check and make sure that the loop that I put on is perfectly closed, because generally when you get jump rings out of a pack, they will not be closed flush. And the way that you close them, see how I'm just kind of wiggling it back and forth? We can get that nice and in focus. And oftentimes you'll hear and feel a little click. And that little click is how you know that it's closed all the way. All right, so let's take another jump ring. And once again, I'm going to hold it and pull one plier toward me, one plier away from me. And then I'm going to grab one of my acorns. Kind of a silly little acorn, but I don't know, it makes me happy. And I'm going to just put that into that other loop and wiggle it back and forth. And did you hear that click? That's how I know that it's nice and closed. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and do that one more time with the leaf, and one more time with the acorn. Now, the many times danglies that you buy on a chain come with jump rings. I almost always replace those jump rings with jump rings of my own. I find that the rings that come to kind of hold the, I'm just kind of linking things together. The rings that come to hold things together aren't jewelry quality. They're generally just kind of coils of wire or hastily put together. I always recommend tossing them and starting fresh with actual jump rings that you have purchased or made yourself. That is certainly acceptable. Also, what's going on here? Let's try. There we go. I recommend either 18 or 20 gauge for jump rings. Anything smaller is going to be, anything thinner is going to be way too flimsy for holding something to something else. And then if you get a little bit heavier duty, you could run the risk of it being too thick for whatever it is that you want. So 18 or 20 gauge is usually the gauge of jump rings that I like to use when I'm doing my work. Okay, so I just kind of used the different rings, and I used more rings than in my initial one because I kind of wanted to see how it looked with a little bit more bulk to it, and I kind of like it. It's a little bit more of a I don't know, it's a little bit more. Sometimes you just need to go a little bit extra. So this one is a little cleaner. I attached everything to one ring. And then here I used a couple more rings, and it's almost kind of neither here nor there when you think about it, which is also a good learning curve or a good teachable moment, depending on how you like your dangles to be, whether you want it to be, I'm trying to get this to stand at attention, whether you want your dangles to be a little bit more or a little bit less. Just trying to bring the leaves front so it looks nice. Come on. I promise they would actually do it. There we go. Okay, so now we have two different versions, two different bottoms, using either the quartzite beads or the little wooden beads, and two different little ways that you can barely tell the difference in the top. So I think that is everything today. We were able to really get this project done without too much time. Felicia, you can go ahead and bring me to the front. She's already done that. See, we know, we're right here. But I hope that in class today, you were able to see different ways of incorporating perhaps different different categories, different types of crafting materials into your beading. And beading doesn't necessarily always have to be for jewelry making either. There are a ton of different home decor items, decorative items, craft items, all kinds of fun things. And we actually have in our back pockets that we will take out and show over the next couple of weeks and months. We have a lot of different classes coming up. We actually just have gotten everything solidified for January, February, and March. And thanks to you, all of the people who watch and participate live, but also who are watching on the replay on the Michaels YouTube channel, because you've loved all of the jewelry classes that I have done, and our other amazing makers who are working also for Michaels. We're going to be able to continue these for a little while longer. So my gratitude goes out to you for hanging out with me every Thursday. No, wait, what day is today? Is anybody else getting that? Every Wednesday at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And then also remember, all of these classes will be available for hopefully in perpetuity, so that you can go back and watch over and over again if maybe there's something that you didn't quite get the first time. And as always, when you watch live, you get to answer or to get answers to your questions in the chat. So that's it. That's our project today. We did a really cute, fun napkin holder. Now, all you have to do is a couple more, and then you'll have your holiday table, festive and beautiful for your holiday meal. So I wish everybody a wonderful, happy, healthy, delightful Thanksgiving. Next week we will be off, but we will be back again with classes in the future. I am grateful for each and every one of you, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity to teach classes on behalf of Beadalon and Artistic Wire for Michaels. So be well, be healthy. Thank you all so very much. And until next time, happy beading.